and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Marla and Craig and Dennis and Lou. Good to have everyone. The 79th verse of the Tao Te Ching will be our discussion today. Any announcements before we begin? Facebook group, Craig, let's mention that.
Yep, the Tao of Our Understanding Facebook page. It's the exact same logo as what's on the podcasts. There's no tricky questions. Some of the groups we do run, there are tricky questions, but there's none to get into this one. You just hit apply.
Tell them about the AA group. We have an AA group, and there's some country that is some kind of a
Burma. It's Burma. We keep getting we're inundated with people from the Burma region, and AA is an acronym for the Arakan Army. So we keep getting people applying, and they've got, seriously, Marla, there's like pictures of the Burmese flag and that, and soldiers walking through this jungle, and it's really bizarre. We must get about 10 or 12 of these every single week.
Yeah,
it's really crazy. So we put some questions in, like, one of them was, are you an alcoholic? And there was another one, and do you agree to the group members? Do you agree to the group admin rules? And like, the only question that gets answered is, are you an alcoholic? And it's like, yes, that's it. And then I always go in and I do this with the other groups that I run as well. Before we let people in, I just have a quick sneak peek at their the profiles and that, and it's all people in the Burmese area trying to file on. So if you're from Burma and you're trying to join the Arakan Army Facebook page, which I don't think they've got one, that's not us.
They almost had one.
They did for a while, because I was just letting people in. I thought, oh, he looks like an alcoholic, so does he? And then what clicked was the fact that most of them look about 12, 13 years old. And you're like, hang on a second, there's something wrong here. So we went through about 3,500 members in this Facebook page. We're like, nah, sorry, you need to.
We had to clean it up. That was funny. Thanks, Craig. I'll have some links in the episode notes. Any books that we talk about, you can go to buddyc.org and order those. I've got links at the bottom of the homepage there. We've got a lot of good recovery resources there too. Our meetings that we talk about are listed there, all kinds of things under the resources. So it's a good page that a lot of people use. Get a lot of hits on that page already. Okay, 79th verse. Marla, just pick one out and read it if you want to pick one of them.
I can pick out my favorite version.
Yeah, pick out your favorite version.
All right. I find this verse to be pretty clear and concise about exactly what it's about. Verse 79, Stephen Mitchell. Failure is an opportunity. If you blame someone else, there is no end to the blame. Therefore, the master fulfills her own obligation and corrects her own mistakes. She does what she needs to do and demands nothing of others.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to read the Jonathan Starr version. After settling a great dispute, some resentment is sure to remain. Being content with what you have is always best in the end. The sage always assumes the debt as if holding the left side of a contract. That's the debtor's side of the contract. He gives and wants nothing in return. One with true virtue always seeks a way to give. One who lacks true virtue always seeks a way to get. To the giver comes the fullness of life. To the taker, just an empty hand. Hold on a second. Though the Tao of heaven has no favorites, it always sides with the one who has a pure heart. Then I want to read my interpretation of this one. I really like it. My title's Love Forgives. When you reconcile a grudge, some resentment may linger. What can be done? The sage takes on the responsibility of mending. He seeks a way to give, a way to love, asking nothing in return. The one without virtue seeks a way to blame and deflect. The one without virtue seeks a way to blame and deflect. Heaven has no preference, but always sides with the one who forgives. Ninth step. I like that idea that the Tao doesn't show favorites, but when you forgive, you're on the side of the Tao. Comments? Okay, guys, I'm glad y'all came.
I thought it was really pretty clear. It's like, it's basically saying, clean up your own side of the street, stay on your side of the street. I don't want to listen to your, bullshit. And if I do the next right thing, I'll be just fine. It's like step 4, step 5, all the above. 7, 4, I haven't done them in so long. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. All of them put together.
Wow. How about Stephen Mitchell's first line, failure is an opportunity? Craig?
Yeah, there's always opportunities.
Why'd you ask Craig? Because he's a failure?
His head. He was going,
it's because I'm a failure.
It's like
he has plenty of opportunities, Marla. That's why I knew you would have something to say, He fails all the time.
But I see the opportunities in it. I see it's the same with arguing with people or any interaction I have with anybody. There's always an opportunity there. If I have an interaction with somebody that I don't like, the opportunity there is that it shows me the type of person I don't want to be. And it's the same when we get into the drinking phase. This time of year is incredibly difficult for a lot of people in drinking. And we see it a lot of time coming into Facebook pages, and it's like, I'm a failure. I've failed at this. I've failed at that. And we kind of think to ourselves, well, we don't fail. We either win or we learn. So what's the opportunities from the challenges that we've came up against? If somebody gets to a certain period and like, I've thrown all that sobriety time away. Well, hang on a second, I don't think you have. What have you learned in that period? What tools have you gained that you can learn from the next time you come up against the same adversity you had? So there's always opportunities. It's really a mindset thing. It's never a failure. What are the opportunities? I was reading the Ron Hogan translation, and he's talking about when an argument is settled, feelings of resentment still remain on either side. What's the point of carrying a grudge? And I thought about the fourth step when we get to the defective characters. One of the columns that we put into it when we're doing our fourth step is, what's the payoff for holding this resentment or this defective character? What's the payoff for having this in your life? And sometimes we can look at the fear side of the payoff, which is I get to talk bad about somebody or I get to cast dirt against somebody. 9 times out of 10, there is no payoff for holding these grudges or resentments. The only person that's suffering is myself. So the opportunity here is I can learn that the only person that's struggling and suffering is myself. So the opportunity is let's let it go.
Someone must risk injury for kindness is a phrase that's used in several of these translations. And I think that, I'm sorry, Mom?
Is that along the lines of like the meek shall inherit the earth? Is that kind of along? No, I'm sorry, I'm wrong.
Well, but what it is, though, is that there is a vulnerability, though, that we have to have if we're going to mend a relationship. Let's say we're talking about the 9th step, and we're going to someone that we, that there's some kind of disagreement with, you want to mend the relationship. It's a very vulnerable position to take, to go to that person and try to do that and come with a loving heart to offer forgiveness in whatever way, because most situations, even if I've been harmed, I have a part in it. I have something to do to, even if it's nothing more than me holding this grudge all of this time, that I've done, if it's something from the past, even if it's nothing more than that, maybe they were wrong to begin with, but I've held this against them all this time. If I go and ask, what can we do to make this right? That's vulnerability on my part. And that's difficult.
Yeah, it is. Especially for dads.
Actually, I was just thinking that the opportunity gives me an opportunity to evolve, or the opportunity to just repeat. That means if I'm blaming somebody else, I'm just repeating the circle and I'm not learning something. I'm just blaming somebody else, so I don't have to learn from that experience. So, but the opportunity is really, I think Greg was touching on it, is to learn and then move on. And that is an opportunity for me to evolve as a human being out of my mistakes. I actually seem to learn more from my mistakes than I does from the success. Success is just, it's okay, this worked out. I'm just moving forward. But on a failure, you have to stop and lick your wounds, right? Say, well, what happened here? What did I do wrong? So
what did Jim W. used to say about that? There's one line he always.
Oh, yes. He used to say, when life goes good, we're grateful. And when life is tough, we learn.
Okay.
No, that was not it.
Oh, that's it.
Was that it?
We're learning.
Something like that. Yeah, when life is tough, we're learning. Yes.
We're growing or learning.
We're growing. That's it. We're growing, not learning. Yes.
Yeah, that was it.
I had a boss that used to give out an annual award for the noble failure, somebody that had tried something and fell flat on their face doing it. But the noble failure was something that you learned from. We have lots of failures, but if we don't learn from them, they're not necessarily a noble failure. And I've had a few of those ignoble failures in my life. It took me a while to figure out my contribution to it, my not learning from them until I finally did.
I think the main one that springs to mind was Thomas Edison. He found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. 10,000 ways that he failed before he succeeded. What Dennis was talking about the opportunity to grow as well, is, am I rigid in my mindset that I'm right? Or am I willing to accept the fact that I might be wrong in something?
And it wasn't until I got into a program that I started to realize that I wasn't learning, that I was doing some of the old stuff over and over again. And one of my favorite things was to hold resentments, because it gave me a sense of righteous indignation. If I resented what somebody had done to me, or I resented this. I remember one time I had the realization that I was really upset about something going on in Africa, some genocide in Sudan or someplace like that. And I was really upset with the politicians for that, for the president and with others, that they weren't taking care of that. And one day it occurred to me that I was feeling good about feeling bad that nobody was doing anything. And I asked myself, well, what are you doing? Are you sending money over there? Are you going over there? Are you doing anything at all to help the situation? And the answer was no. I'm just feeling resentful so I can soak in my own self-righteousness. And that was a pivotal learning for me that helped break one of the many cycles that I get stuck in.
It's funny you should say that, because I had issues at work, and I was talking to somebody not that far away from me, and he was saying, like, so every week you come here and complain about the same thing. So what are you going to do about it? There's two types of person you can be. You can be the type of person that's going to sit and complain about something and not do anything about it, or you can be the type of person that's going to come and complain and then go and actually do something about it.
Yeah, something about courage to change and serenity to accept the things you cannot change.
I think you mentioned that a couple of times as well.
There's so much fear behind it also, right? It's easier to look at somebody else, so I don't have to look at myself. That's the first fear. And there's a fear of also evolving, that I have to do something different for me to evolve. And that is look at myself and learn from that opportunity. There's more hard work and just the easy way out of just saying, oh, you did this and this wrong. I might be right on some points, and then just go into myself and not do anything about it.
Does anybody else have a fear of not having anything to complain about?
Mm-hmm.
we've got massive changes happening at work, and a lot of the changes are based on the feedback that we've given the business. Because like, oh, we can't do this. You don't provide this. You don't do that. So the business now came out and says, right, we're going to start providing this. We're going to start doing this. We're going to enable you to do that as well. I'm sitting there thinking, sure, what am I going to complain about now?
You have sponsees, Craig. You have plenty to complain. How about this line? One with true virtue always seeks a way to give. One who lacks true virtue always seeks a way to get. To the giver comes the fullness of life. To the taker, just an empty hand. And that is so powerful. So powerful. And that true virtue is the day of Tao Te Ching. That's the virtue. That's the love. That's the kindness. That's the compassion. So the one with love, with compassion is always looking for a way to give. And the one without is always looking for a way to get. The result is the one who gives has the fullness of life, and the one that's always looking for a way to get, it's just an empty hand. They have nothing. That's good. How about, I've got a note from when we've talked about this before, about emotional debt. They talked about it in debt, as in the sage always assumes the liability side of the contract. But what about how we hold emotional debt against people? That's part of what we're talking about with mending relationships. But if I'm not careful, I will hold little things instead of letting those things go. That's another level of vulnerability, I
think as well as that's complete surrender as well. I think we still like to have just that little thing over somebody, that little bit of emotional leverage that we can use.
If it's nothing more than feeling we're better than someone,
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. There's nothing worse than not having something over somebody.
Yeah.
Can you kind of repeat that again, buddy? I don't think I got that at all. If you're holding emotional, what was it? If you hold something emotional against somebody?
It's emotional debt. If we're holding emotional debt against someone, like if we're, let's say that, I say we have a relationship with someone who it's a little, not really one-sided, but you feel you put a lot more into the relationship than they do. It's easy to think that they owe you in some way. That kind of
thing. Oh yeah, I've been through that. I've had my score list up.
Yes,
and I fall short all the time. I don't get it, right? So actually, you're right. I don't. Wow, there's been some growth. I don't do that anymore. I really don't. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and the one without virtue, another interpretation says, seeks a way to blame and deflect.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a daughter like that who's holding me emotionally hostage, or emotional debt, if you want to call it. She's not speaking to me for some unimagined reason that, she thinks I wronged her, or, I'm just not the mom she thinks I'm supposed to be, or whatever. Anyway, so she just stops speaking to me, which is not cool. It's just not cool. And that is not the way I've ever treated my family members. I've never gotten that upset with my family members where I would not want to speak to them. But this is, something that she's doing and has done before. And it's like holding me emotionally hostage. So I have to try and really not be held hostage by it and not be bothered by it. But it's very difficult.
And you have to do what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
You have to risk injury for kindness. You have to risk it, and not return the same behavior.
And
Because it'd be easy to try to, well, I'll teach her a lesson, by God, we'll just see how long we can take this, that kind of a thing, and it just doesn't work.
To lead by example, even though she lives halfway around the world from me, to lead by example by letting her know that I'm fine. I'm not going to be held, by her imagined, whatever she thinks I did to her. I'm not going to be held to it. And I don't feel guilty about anything but yes, I have to treat her with loving kindness. I just don't like her behavior. I love her dearly. I just don't like her behavior.
Yeah. And she's got to figure that out, Marla. She's got to figure out, she's got to see that. And the only way she'll see that is not by being taught a lesson, but by you loving her.
Yeah. That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So does that mean, Buddy, that in Marla's situation, you would do something went wrong here. Is there something I can do about it? That's you showing vulnerability. And then you can just leave it at that. You can still try to reach out, and then that's kind of it.
First thing I would do is sit with it and just remind myself I'm powerless over the relationship, and just ask my higher power, surrender to it, and just ask how that you want to see clearly what you can do, how you can mend it, and how can I get love into this relationship, and just sit with it until you see what action to take. That's the awareness, in my opinion. Like we were talking about the 11th step the other day. That's the awareness is, okay, how is the universe moving in regards to her? And until I saw it, I would just have an open heart and just do what I knew to do. But if I didn't know what to do, I would just sit with it until I did.
Yeah. I mean, I knew the better not to talk to her immediately after the incident. I just waited. I would have been a reactionary, but she's not speaking to me anyway. So there's been a long time, and, I'm just letting her do what she needs to do. And when she's ready to talk, I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
What would be difficult is not for you to start harboring resentment because of her behavior, the seesaws, Yeah.
I don't play that game. I don't know why she does. But I don't want to talk about it. She's
got some growing up to do.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't react to it. Because sometimes that's what...
Craig, come on. Quit.
Sorry, I'm hang on a second.
Speak up. Yeah.
It's easier for me to give people advice than it is to actually do what I say. So just give me a second. I wouldn't react to it. Because sometimes that's what people are looking for. People are looking for that reaction. People are looking for us to go run into them, and that gives them that leverage over us.
That's what she's mad about. Is I didn't react with her the way she wanted me to. About what she felt somebody wronged her.
Yeah, I think the opposite of reacting to somebody is definitely responding. And I think personally, I would just like, I'm here. And when they do come back to us, we don't hold it against them.
It's hard to do, Craig. That's hard to do.
And it's incredibly difficult. I've had it and the reason I can see that is because I've been through it. It's I have that grudge against somebody for things that they've done. My daughter never spoke to me for 2 years, and it was difficult trying to just forget about everything that went on. And the relationship we have now is absolutely fantastic. It's a work in progress every single day, but you know what? Life's too short when you've got a 23-year-old that's just trying to find her own way in the world. We just have to love them. And it is difficult to do because there's always something that comes along.
I've got a similar situation with a stepson that doesn't connect up when I reach out to him and make an invitation or reach out and get no response. I just keep reaching out. That's my part of the communication is to communicate to him. He can, and I want to. I don't expect any response. I don't get any response. But if I have something to say to him, I say it. And I try to do it in the care. It's not anything that's emotionally laden or anything. I just let him know, well, we're getting together at the house. If you want to come over there, other kids are coming or something like that. Never shows up, but I feel like, well, I reached out and that's on me, and his response is on him, and it's all good.
When my son was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, when he was out running and gunning, I would text him. Like if there was something that I could compliment him, or some way that something I was grateful for with him, I would text him and thank him, even though most things I was very unhappy with him about. I didn't touch those things. I just touched what I could find gratitude in instead. And that worked. And when he passed, we had a good relationship. I was seeing him on a regular basis, more so because of the grandson, but he was there. I went over for dinner a couple of weeks before he passed, or before he got sick. He invited me over for dinner one night, and that kind of a thing. So, we had a good relationship at the end of that. Who knew it was going to be the end? I had no idea, 25 years old, but that started with me, and he always told me he loved me, which, I'd never have done that I've done that with my daughter, but not with my parents, or we're not I'm not one of those people to use that word, much. So we had that kind of relationship. And I think the reason we had it was because when he would slight me, not call me on my birthday, or not, come for Christmas or any of those things, I just ignored it. I didn't say anything about it. So if text me, you piece of shit, why aren't you here? Blah, blah, like I want to do, and I said, whoa, buddy, you can't do that, so I would do the opposite. I found something I could be grateful for in him, I would let him know. I'd wish him a happy birthday, no matter whether he wished me one or not, that kind of a thing. I didn't tit for tat at all.
Well, also, we're the parent, and we shouldn't, they're not our friends. And our kids should not have the right to judge us and speak to us.
But they do.
They do, but I really have to put a stop to that. I really have to put no. I have to stop the conversation when she gets to all of my faults,
Yeah, I wouldn't listen to that either.
Yeah, it's just, we're done with the conversation.
We had a group member that dealt with that, and his children would raise those kinds of things with him, and he said, "Did I do that today?" Well, no, this was back in, when I was 6, you did that. Well, I can't control who I was or what I did when you were 6. I can control what I do today. And so that was the kind of response that he had with it. It's, what can I control today? What can I control now? And if it's part of making amends, there's some things that I would have done differently. And I've told the kids that, making my amends, but I can't go back and undo it.
No,
I can only do what I can do today.
And we're not perfect beings either. I remember looking up to my parents like they're perfect, they're gods. So yeah, our kids look up to us like that until they get to a certain point where they see we're like just people with faults. But I think you have to be an adult to see your parents like that, like they're actually real people, and hope for the best for your own kids to see you as somebody who's a real human being. Nothing more than that.
Yeah, don't even count on anything between 14 and 24. Just don't have any expectations.
My daughter came back at 19, so she came back early. She was a smart one. So
I kind of see a pattern in my behaviors with my parents. And then I got to that age where I like, man, they're just human beings. Because it's funny when you're a kid, you don't only see yourself grow up, you actually, without knowing it, you also see your parents grow up at the same time, right? You don't think about that. Mm-hmm. So I think some of those things that I was mad about with my parents after I found, man, they make mistakes too. That's that growing phase. That didn't happen to me, well, late, because I was an alcoholic, I guess. It was into my 30s that I was totally okay with what my parents have done, and I loved them more than I ever have before. Now, I think that might also happen with my kids, and especially for me, I left them. I freaking left the continent. I go, I can't deal with this. And so there is some damage to be done there. My daughter, I always had an easy relationship with, and every time we see her, we can just catch up. But my son, it's a little bit different. He don't want to talk to me that much. But I totally accept it, and I'm okay with him judging me. I can't do anything about it. But my house will always be open for him when he comes and wants. So that's how I look at it now. I don't know if that changed, but it's not. I don't even think I deserve. I don't know if deserving is the right word, but if they choose not to want to have a relationship with me, I understand it, because I made that hard choice when my son was 4 and my daughter was 7 at that time when I moved to the United States. So it's a little bit different, but thank you for bringing that up, Marla. That is very hard when we talk about failures and success with our family, I think, and it's always the ones that's closest to us that hurt us the most, right?
Sure, yeah. They have that power. Mm-hmm. You have to take the power away.
Yeah. Well, when my kids were little, I thought everything needed to be a lesson. I was teaching them lessons for life. But as they got to be adults, I realized I could not teach lessons anymore. I had to learn to love them regardless of what lessons they were trying to teach me,
I think I used to have a sponsor like that, buddy.
I know.
I used to have a sponsor like that did the same thing. I said, hey, I'm an adult. I don't need a father anymore. And it was just exactly like that shirt that Greg is wearing from Star Wars. Dennis, I am your father. I was like, holy crap. That's not what I need anymore. But yeah.
Myself, it's important to remember that I've never done this before.
Right.
Contrary to what everybody thinks, I do not have all the answers. If Callum comes up against a challenge, we'll try and work out together. And sometimes he says, I thought you'd be able to do this, Dad. I was like, well, you know what? I've never had an 11-year-old boy before. I've never been 43 before. And there's still things in life that I'm figuring out. So we can kind of make it easy by trying to figure out together and trying to reach a resolution that suits everybody.
Greg, I was 18 years old before I heard my father say, I don't know.
You were never 18 years old. I think you were born the age you are.
He always had an answer for everything. I was like, what? What is, you don't know? Yeah.
Were you disappointed back then? Why can't you just tell me? You used to know everything.
Just make something up,
Oh, that's interesting.
But doesn't that go back to that virtue part that we were talking about?
Now he makes things up that don't make sense. So anyway, that's another story. Wait till they get older and you start taking care of it.
I think it's just an age thing in my dad.
Let's see if there's anything else text-wise. I have one thing. There's a commentary on verse 79 in Jonathan Starr's translation that's really good. He says, the metaphor, which is often interpreted as if the sage is owed but does not demand from others. When a debtor returns the money, he gives but does not expect anything in return. So the sage gives as if paying off a debt without any expectation of a return. However, the sage gives out of love and not out of obligation. Mm. So the analogy does not hold in this respect. This could also be interpreted as the sage attending to his duties or performing his part. And then he talks about a particular character there that's talking about virtue. And it says that the meaning is the same as Dharma. So that the one with virtue there is the one with Dharma. And Dharma's righteousness is the natural law of the universe. This natural law arises out of goodness, virtue, compassion, love, kindness. All the virtues of heaven are embodied in the Dharma. Anyone who follows Dharma is simpatico with heaven and therefore draws heaven's power. The favor of heaven's impartial, and like the rays of the sun, it shines on everyone, yet only falls on those who are open to receiving it. Those who have aligned themselves with heaven's law, those who follow Dharma, it always reveals itself in exact proportion to the openness of the one receiving it. In this way, it is always with those who are good, those who are open, those who follow the laws of nature.
Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is a good example. He's just below ego, right? And you just see he's just doing the next thing that's right. He don't know. He's just, this is just it. I'm just going with the flow, and he ends up being a millionaire.
We really need to do that one day. The Tao and Forrest Gump and the Tao would be a good. He had a lot of analogies and a lot of similarities, a lot of principles of the Tao that were in that movie.
Yes.
Very much so.
That's true.
There's a second book, Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, I think it's called. And it's kind of like the opposite of the first. Everything goes bad. Absolutely everything that he touches just goes bad. But if I recall, Forrest doesn't change a bit. He just goes along.
It's interesting. It's also so interesting how it came about. I think when I saw a documentary on it, it was more than a decade in the making before they even start shooting the movie, for the script, for it to be passed and all that. It was interesting. Very.
Oh, Amy texted me. She's in New York this week working. She wished she was here. She said she's here in spirit. So she's missing us today. She'll be back next week. Any other comments, guys? This has been a good conversation. Thank you.
I'm sure Amy would have quoted page 552 saying if there's somebody that you've got resentment against, then pray for them. Tell them, pray that they have health, wealth, prosperity, everything that you want for yourself. Pray for them.
Even if you don't mean it, it's empty words. This is actually the resentment verse out of the Tao Te Ching, in my opinion. This is the 552 of the Tao Te Ching, verse 479. Good, guys. Anything else before we close?
Resentment used to be my superpower. Now I don't have any, I guess.
Well, it's one of the few tools that fear really has, Luke. Because before, all we had was the tools of fear. That's all we had, which are selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment. That's it. That's all fear has. Just like we see on page 84 in the big book, talking about step 10, when we see dishonesty, selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment and fear crop up, that they talk about what to do with that. And I realized when I said, that's the only tools I had before recovery. And my big one, like you said, was resentment.
Yeah.
I could just steam over things that happened years and years. I'd make notes about things so I wouldn't forget it,
How free do you feel not holding on to that shit? Freedom.
I was thinking the other day, Marla, I have none that I have no resentments that I'm intentionally holding on to at all. None. Anything I have are things that I'm working on, and I have very little percentage of what I used to have is almost nothing in comparison.
And there's a lot of freedom in that.
It's so much freedom. So much freedom.
In our Al-Anon home group, we say that expectation is premeditated resentment.
Yeah.
If you're expecting somebody to do something, you have an expectation of someone or something, then it's just premeditated resentment. They may do it. If they don't do it, If they don't do it the right way, or they don't do it your way, then you can be resentful about it.
Yeah.
Some wise man once says, when you keep blaming everybody and you can't understand, why is everybody wrong all the time? I just don't understand why everybody is wrong. He says there's only two things that can be there if you think everybody's wrong and you're right all the time. Even A, you're a superhero, or B, you're wrong. And since superheroes don't exist, it might be B. Right. So.
Guys, y'all all brought some good today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you, Will. If I don't talk to you, y'all have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google Recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.